Great. So hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Gable. I'm super excited with my next guest, Michael, who is the CEO of SwagUp. So we'll dive right in. Michael, tell us a little bit about the company. What does it do? And what actually inspired you to start a company that's all about swag?
Well, it's a long way from my mom's garage, basically, all the way to now you're hearing about us in Israel, apparently.
Yes.
but yeah, I mean, back in college, me and a buddy had, we were promoting an app that we had created to find other kids on campus to play volleyball with, play basketball with, all these types of things. And in that process, we wanted to get some custom flags put up in dorm rooms and do some shirts and other merch to promote the app on campus. And in that process, I was trying to find custom flags in the US, and they're like $140. And I ended up finding them overseas through Alibaba for like $8 each. And I was like, okay, we have this app business. Why not on the side just start like a custom printing website? And it wasn't like this linear path where that became SwagUp, but that was like the original insight of like how I knew about this industry and supply chain and all those kinds of things. And then, fast forward 3 years later, I dropped out of school. I was business partners with an NFL player. And then I found myself at a VC firm. And at the VC firm, you just, you're all around startups all day long. You're all around these funding events, and startups just love swag. It's like the first thing you do, you got some money, you got a logo, whatever it is, like swag is always front and center, and founders love it. Like it's super important to them. And there just didn't seem to be a great solution for, the modern company, like, whether it's an enterprise or some, fast growth startup. Because on one side of the market, you have like these e-commerce, like, big e-commerce sites like Custom Ink and For Imprint and some others that, they're fine, but they're more so for like one-off things. Like, let me buy 50 shirts, let me buy 20 hats. It's not really a full solution, and it's not curated in any sense. Like all the work is on you to figure out like, what do I do? What items do I get? How do I design them? And then on the other side, you have like, agency style businesses, which are more mom and pop, like very hands-on. They know a lot about your business, but they're inherently unscalable. They take a long time to work with, they're expensive. So, I saw, startups love swag. There's no brand out there, and there's no company that kind of bridges the gap between like e-commerce and then like the services that companies need, and then brings, so that was basically the insight for SwagUp. And then it was like, let's use technology to like kind of bring this together and scale a really great experience that's curated and fits the needs of startups. And then we just realized over time, the importance of something like a swag pack, and then also, ongoing, inventory management, fulfillment, and APIs and all this stuff. So it's evolved into much more than just, a swag brokerage at this point. But it was really just like, hey, startups love swag, and there's really nothing out there for them that is the right solution for what they need.
That's pretty amazing, like identifying a problem that it seems so obvious now, right? And I think one of the things that are interesting to me as well as an entrepreneur is what were your challenges when you started, because it is a heavy operational business. I've seen multiple, posts of you in the warehouse and things like that, which is amazing to see it right now. But how did you start? What were the challenges? But even like for entrepreneurs that are working with physical stuff, I would say, what do you see as like your biggest learning curves, I would say, and how did you scale?
Yeah, well, I think the reason why we've done so well and why companies like to work with us is because we've like abstracted out the complexity for them. But that just means it's really complex for us on the back end of the business, as you've seen. Like there's so many logistical touch points that go involve lots of vendors, lots of coordination. And so in the beginning, we didn't have any money. It just started it myself. I had like 15, 20K or something, maybe 30K total saved up. So it was just like, how can we build the most lightweight, quick, solution and process to make this happen? Not try to say, hey, we need to have this 20,000, 40,000 square foot warehouse, whatever, day one. It was just like, hey, let's just put up a website, put up some Google ads and see if anybody even cares about this. And it was, Wix website, Typeform, Zapier, Trello, like all these little hacky, bootstrappy things. So it was very much like projecting out like, hey, we can do this thing. And then when we finally get orders, we'll just figure it out like afterwards. And literally it was my mom's house, which became like the manufacturing facility. Like, so you'd walk home one day and FedEx and UPS are dropping off all these packages on our porch, and you can't even like, there's no room to even get into the house eventually, once we start to grow a little bit. And I just had, people from down the street that I knew growing up say, hey, can you come join and like help and just pack these things up for me? So we're at a kitchen table, with a little mini production line packing up these boxes. And meanwhile, I have like 2 dogs in the house, and their dog hair is like getting on the t-shirts and everything. And it's like a complete mess. But the fundamentals were there. Like, people really wanted it, and I think that's the main thing. It's like, don't get so caught up in like the operations and how perfect it is and how scalable it is. It's like, first, just make sure you have something that people really want and spend as much time and energy on that. And then once you have that, it's been a constant refinement of our operation over the last 4 years. Like, we went from my house, then we went to like a 2,300 square foot, like really shitty warehouse with like no air conditioning or anything in New Jersey. Then we moved to this nicer one that was like 13,000 square feet by Hoboken, by New York City. And then we just moved into like a really nice 40,000 square foot space with, all these different technology and different processes and different areas that do things. So it's just like a constant evolution, and you just got to kind of break it up into the chunks along the journey of just like, okay, what do we need today just to get this done? And then, constantly scale. But you won't like demand to be ahead of your operations. I feel like, it's not like the most conventional wisdom. But you should always be kind of catching up on the back end. Like, you don't want to get so far ahead on like your operations, and you have like this perfectly optimized business that nobody cares about,
That makes a lot of sense. But actually, a follow up on that, how did you get the word out there? Like, how did you know that what you're building is what people really want? Besides the fact that you've seen, yes, startups, companies are obsessed with swag. But from there, to actually getting the word out there, what did you use? What like tactics did you use?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, like originally it was just like intuition, like, okay, there's a need here, let's build it. But then there was a few things. Like, one, I was very keyed in on like the design and presentation of the brand and company from day one, because it gave us this credibility, even when we were very small, that like, wow, this looks well presented, it looks well packaged, like they're probably somewhat legit. And then tactically speaking, it was just putting out, I tried Facebook ads and I tried Google ads. Facebook ads were terrible because you get a lot of like low value, low quality, small business type leads. And they could be good for retargeting and other stuff. And we might, circle back to it. But then Google ads were very high intent. People were going to look for something very specific. And I always remember one of the first leads we got within like a week was Soylent, the company that makes those meal replacement shakes, that a lot of like Silicon Valley type people like to drink. Yeah. And I was like, wow, like if this company is reaching out to us out of nowhere, like we're nothing, just started, just put up a site, there's probably something here, And then from there, once we were able to get a couple first customers, it was always like, how do we make sure that they have the greatest experience possible? Like go way above and beyond. Like, I never cared about the revenue or the profit or anything like that. It was always like this long-term approach. Like, let's give them a remarkable experience so that they become ambassadors for us, in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how we still treat people like that. But I think the first like 500 customers, for example, it was always like this very, very long-term mindset. Like, how can we leverage these initial customers to get more customers in the future? And then another big thing we did was we started to send out sample packs, because we're always like, what we do is very visual and physical, and we want to make sure that people haven't had the experience to actually see what it's going to be like, get the emotional impact of like, wow, unboxing the swag, and start to drive like the impetus to place the orders, versus like this nice to have thing that like, oh, maybe we'll do swag one day, or maybe we'll do swag packs for new hires or whatever. It's like, no, it's in your hands. And then you're like, wow, I have to do this. Like, I want to do this for our company right away. So we send out tons and tons of, free sample swag packs, and we overnight it to them, and we spend a lot of money on that. And it helps us kind of drive deals forward. And also it creates all these ambassadors out there. I was just on LinkedIn just now before we got on here, and somebody posted an unboxing video of like them opening up the box, the sample pack, and sharing it out, and why everyone should use SwagUp. So think we've kind of enabled people to become ambassadors for us in a way that has driven a lot of organic and viral traffic. And then also just the end product is a physical product that's out in the world. And the more swag that we make that's out there, the more our brand is out there, because people, like, if you guys are sending your employees or your customers or whatever some sort of swag from us, they might say, hey, Liza, this is amazing. Like, where did you get this? Like, we want to do this for our company. And that just kind of compounds over time. The bigger we get, the more we're out there and the more opportunities kind of come our way.
It's amazing because it's basically like classic network effects with referral in a sense, right? If you think about it, which is amazing. And I'm wondering when you grew, is it something, the company is already really huge in that sense, right? Like you operate in so many markets. And I think what has changed throughout this time in how you treat, customers, or how do you get the word out there? Is it still the same? Anything that has changed because you have scaled?
I think we've just become so much more data driven. I think fundamentally the culture and the way that we treat customers and how we go about providing a quality experience hasn't changed at all. But I think we have a lot more technology that makes this process more seamless, both internally for us to handle the operations and then externally for users to interact with us. So there's that side, so we can handle more volume in general and provide a better user experience. But then also we've just become so much more data driven. I remember before the pandemic, it was like January 2020, we had been in business for 2.5 years at that point. And it was very difficult for us to forecast the future in our business because it's not a strict like SaaS business where you have pretty predictable recurring revenue. Like every month you start at $0 again, and it's transactional, and you have to figure out like where's that revenue going to come from. You can't just assume, oh, we're going to do $1 million or $10 million or whatever this month. Like it's very dependent on like what comes in and when it comes in and when it closes and all that kind of stuff. So, but I was like, there's got to be a way that we can really understand our like pipeline and top of the funnel and traffic and also our existing customer count to anticipate what future revenue is going to be. So we spent a lot of time in the beginning of last year starting to forecast out and start to understand, is there correlation between top of the funnel, how much like goal value we're generating through Google Analytics and stuff, how much leads and opportunities we're creating, how many accounts we have, and what does that mean for return revenue or repeat revenue over time. And we're able to build a very predictable model, I would say about plus or minus 10% to predict revenue over the next several months. And that was super helpful for us during the pandemic because it's very easy to like just shelter down in a pandemic and start to like taper down on cost and marketing and all this stuff. But we started to have early signs that like we were going to grow a lot because we can see at the top of the funnel like what that was going to do to future revenue based on correlations and like data analysis that we're doing. So that gave us the confidence basically to invest and kind of put the pedal to the metal in a time when everyone was being very conservative,
cautious,
and then yeah, exactly. So that allowed us to just grow incredibly quickly last year. And now in general, we have a 4-person like business intelligence team, and we're just looking at data all around the business, how we do things internally and operate, how much space we need in our facility, how long it takes different suppliers to get us the products, like all this kind of stuff, so that we can just make the best decisions possible. Because it's like this constant balance of like, it's the EQ side and like the soft skills and like, how you treat people and the experience for the customers. But at the same time, all of that just has to lead to better numbers, and you have to really understand those numbers and understand the levers in the business. So this is, just a lot more tech and data, I think, at this point.
I love it. I'm also a very data-driven person. Like I completely agree. Everything that we do has to be measurable, because it's exactly what you say. Like we can assume something, but you need the tools to predict, and you really need you need also to understand what happened in order to forecast what you have going forward. And completely agree with you on that. One of the things that I want to ask you, which you answered a little bit already, but it's related to your leadership style, or in general, like how you see yourself as a leader growing this company. from zero, from yourself, only yourself, and to what it is today. Like, what were the key things that you feel that helped, and what additional, like, insights or advice would you give to fellow entrepreneurs that are starting out, or in different growth stages of their company?
Yeah, I mean, the core lesson is just scaling beyond yourself. In the beginning, the first 2 years or 2.5 years, like I did basically all of the sales. I managed, I created the website, I created all of the back end kind of, Trello workflows with Zapier. I did all of the customer engagement. I picked, and curated the selection of items that are on our site. Like, there's no way that the business would have, I couldn't take off a day or a week or a month and just the business could not just continue, and it seemed very foreign or very far out in the future where there would ever be a point where if I could step back, the business would not only continue, but it would prosper and do better. And then there was this point, about like 2.5 years in, where I started to, maybe it was because I was just like working all the time and I was just a little bit tired or getting lazy or whatever it was, but I started to give up control of things to certain people. And you start to realize, like, first off, if everything that you wanted to get done gets done, but at 80%, by giving it to other people, well, that's way better than you hoarding all of those, tasks and all those objectives that you're trying to do. And yeah, maybe you'll do it at 100%, but you probably won't only get one or two things done, or you'll procrastinate for 2 months or 3 months because you just don't have the time to do it. And I was like, shit, if I can just give this to people, let them do it at 80%, and I can, scale my ability or time, we'll be able to move in parallel. And you also realize that when you get great people and that's all they're focused on, they probably do it better than you, to be, anyway. So it was just like a changing mind shift, that to be valuable to an organization long term, it's being able to build a scalable, infrastructure and team around you. It's not you being some sort of all-star contributor that is just so good at everything. And so at this point, like, I really don't do much on a daily basis when it comes to the ongoing operations of the company. Like, nothing is reliant on me to continue moving forward. I would say the only thing is like product, just because I have a lot of say in like the roadmap, but tactically and execution wise, there's all these teams that have been built around me and around these other leaders. And I've just become very big on this idea that get really strong leaders for all the important things in the business. So first you have to identify what are the most important parts of the business and objectives. Then you have to give somebody, empowerment to own those things, and then let them run their own like mini startup within your company. Let them build out their teams, let them build out their strategy. And all they have to do is just hit their goal or their part of the equation. And that becomes their, North Star. And obviously all aligned to overall company mission. And the hard part though has been taking people that were early leaders within the company and getting them to that same mindset and shift that I feel like I was able to make in the middle of kind of the journey so far. It's like, because people are always, a lot of people are tied to like how hard they work or how often they work to get like self-worth out of it. And it's very hard for people to make that shift of like, actually, it's not about how hard I work or how good I am. It's about how well I empower a team around me to accomplish a goal. It's much more about coordination. It's like Bill Belichick is not a great football player. He's a great coach and aggregator of resources and coordinating them to achieve a goal. And getting people to become coaches is the hard part. And that was the biggest unlock for me that allowed us to scale much broader than me at this point.
I love it. I completely agree. And I think also what you said about hiring, like making sure that you have key hires that are, can grow to these roles. And also I think there is a lot of trust embedded in what you're saying, and really giving people the opportunity to prove themselves, and they basically outgrow what they, like, if you will, tell them what to do, as opposed for them being themselves and creatively growing to that. And like, because that's exactly the point, like the bottom line is what matters, right?
Yeah, and you have to get people, you have to put people in place there that you have the trust in. Like, you have to get good people. Like, you don't want to skimp out on hiring somebody really junior or mid-level, like for these core parts of the business, because they don't actually give you leverage, because you then are still managing it, or you're still the one that's driving execution, and you just have you have somebody that's kind of an extra hand for you, like it's an extra 20%, 30%, 40%, versus actually just a whole entire different person. Like I think Keith Raboy calls them like barrels versus ammunition. Like you need these barrels that can go and take initiatives from start to finish without your involvement.
I completely agree. I love it. That brings me to another question that is related. It's a lot about how you build the culture of the company, and I think that that's a lot about that. But how do you see, especially now with COVID, with everything? It's not even COVID, with the shift to remote or flexible work, and you see like so many employees are actually, or companies shifting to either fully remote or hybrid remote. How do you see your company, be part of this larger shift?
No, I think in general, this is like a big topic of conversation, for us internally, because we feel like we're at a bit of an inflection point for the company and for the culture in general. Like we've grown so much at the beginning of last year, we had about, I don't know, 50 people. Now we have like 175, something like that. It's been like 3x growth in just headcount alone. And just the dynamic of how we do our work has changed so much. There's a lot more structure in place. There's a lot more, you have different leaders that have just come here in the last 6 months. We're changing how we do like road mapping. Like there's just a lot of change going on. And it feels like if we don't get a handle on like what the culture is and what we want it to be, it's going to kind of just like self-articulate itself in a way that maybe isn't what we want, So we just feel like right now is a really important time for us to be deliberate about what is the culture we're trying to build, and make sure that we're setting it up for success while we scale and while things are changing so much. In general, like we've always wanted to build and always have had like this very high performance, high impact, high expectation type culture. I'm a very big fan of like the Netflix culture ideology of you get really great people into a company, and great people want to work on really hard problems with other really talented people. And I think that that's the the ultimate kind of joy and fulfillment. Like people talk about burnout a lot, and I see it for sure. And if you just work yourself for 16, 18 hours a day, like it's going to happen. But I think burnout is more typically tied to lack of fulfillment in the role and in the company, and lack of understanding of how their work ties to a bigger mission than it has to do with just pure working hard. Because if you ask, like a football player or something that has, played football their entire life and all they ever wanted to do was be in the NFL, none of them were ever burned out going to the gym at 6 a.m. and then doing a 4-hour workout, and then, at practice, and then going back to the gym again at 2 a.m. Like they just do it because that's what they love. And I think that you just have to make sure it's about finding the right people that really resonate with, where the company is trying to go and what the mission is, and then put them in a place to, be impactful and succeed, and make sure that they, they have the clarity to know like how their job is impacting us as a company, getting closer to that. So, we try to focus a lot on that, like getting really strong people and making sure that they know how their work is tied to where we're going. And one of the biggest problematic areas that I've seen as we've scaled, the thing that's one of the hardest things to maintain is this cross-functional collaboration and just like understanding of what goes on in the company. As you get really big, especially in this remote world, it becomes even hard to fundamentally know who is at the company to begin with. If it's like this person joined 2 weeks ago, this person joined 2 months ago, like a lot of people just aren't even aware of the different teams and who's on those teams and who leads those teams and what do they work on, what teams do they collaborate with, and that's something that we're trying to work through, because you have so many smart people in these startups, not just ours, but and so many others, and you don't want to silo them off to just work on their specific things. Like you want this cross-functional kind of like conversations happening where 1 + 1 = 3, because you start to like, you have these insights and then you bring them up to this other team and they weren't thinking about the problem that way, and then together you come to better outcomes. And I think Steve Jobs had this like metaphor or analogy that there's this guy that he lived by, and he walked by, and he had these rocks in a canister, and he put 2 in there, and they're really ugly looking. And he had like this machine that like, spun them up or whatever. And the guy's like, come back tomorrow and you'll see what happened. And he comes back and they're like these super polished rocks. And I think in a remote world, you don't get that like, friction as much of like, 2 people kind of bouncing their ideas off of each other to then come to a much more beautiful outcome. So you have to try to manufacture that, serendipity and collaboration deliberately. So we try to do things like, Donut. Donut is like a Slack app to help people, just do random meetups and 10-minute, 15-minute coffees and stuff like that. We're working on like an intranet project right now, just to give people a place where they can go and see like the org chart and click through to different teams and who's on those teams and who leads them and stuff like that. But then also, getting people in person as much as possible. We just had like 40 people from the sales and revenue team in the warehouse the other day, in New Jersey, and we're doing a big all hands in Miami probably at the start of next year. So, and then this week we have like 10 people coming into Miami to do like a strategy session. So we're trying to, like, every week or two, there's some group meeting up somewhere, in the company, and it's people from different sides of the company too. So just trying to be deliberate about like making sure that people are collaborating, but then also making sure that, high performance cultures maintain and people know like where they fit into the equation. Or some of the things we try to focus on.
I completely agree, and I see this all the time, like when we speak with customers, that you need to be very deliberate about how you build your company culture, especially now, because a lot has changed. Because prior to that, like when a lot of companies had like, fancy offices, and when you interview a person, they come to the office, you know what I mean? There is a lot that ties into that. But now it's not really what you're selling to an employee that wants to join. You're selling a company culture, you're selling a vision. I think that's a really big difference in that sense.
Which ultimately, if it's done right, could lead to better outcomes as well, because 100%. You're getting people for the right reason. You're not 100%. Attracting them because you have, Facebook's got this beautiful campus where they give you free barbecue and ice cream at lunch. It's like, no, you actually care about the company, and whether you were working from home or working in an office, it wouldn't matter, because you're really bought into the vision and the team and how you get work done. So
completely agree. And how do you see SwagUp in general ties into this remote first world, I would say? Have you seen any changes?
For sure. I mean, we were very much set up for like this future work environment. I think because, if you think about what we do fundamentally, it's kind of abstracting out the complexity of this swag management process and taking it out of your hands and kind of putting it in the cloud in a way. So before, if you talk to these companies, they had lots of different vendors. They have like swag physically in closets or in extra offices at their office. They're getting interns or different people to help them put packages together and put it on people's desk, or send it out to remote hires, or whatever it is. And we were always set up in a way that like, hey, we handle this entire process for you. You don't have to touch it ever. And that just became way more important in an environment where you're not at the office anymore. It's not like, people like HR leaders or marketing leaders are going to like fill up their garage with a bunch of swag and start making runs to the post office during a global pandemic or something. So, us being able to, we were to get people up and running really quickly and pivot to like being able to send swag to customers and event attendees and new hires and stuff without much effort. Like they can go from start to finish in like 2 weeks and get up and running and have like a new hire program in place. So, and we also saw that there was lots of other use cases. Like new hires has always been a big focus area for us, but virtual events was really big. You have companies like Hopin, so you have swag is always a huge component of a conference, and you're doing all these virtual events. Like, how do you bring a kind of human aspect to it? How do you bring the physical to this remote environment? So you had a lot of virtual events sending packages out to the attendees. Like we did the TED conference last year and sent out boxes to all the attendees to the TED conference. But then also things like universities. Like universities are doing virtual learning and virtual graduation ceremonies. They want to bring that physical element to it and create that bond between everybody in that group in a way that just a pure virtual environment couldn't satisfy. So that new use cases emerged, but then also even companies that were doing this physically they realize like, wow, this is so much easier to work with you guys to handle this. And now even as they go back to the office, they have no plans to return to like managing swag on their own physically in a space, because they're like, wow, you just gave me back 20 hours a week. Like, why do I ever want to take this on again? There's no downside to doing this, you know? So it was a huge catalyst for customer acquisition. And now I don't think there's any going back at this point. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That I completely agree. Like, I also understand that very well. Like for example, I graduated from Stanford in the pandemic, so it was virtual.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what they did. They really wanted you to feel connected, because you missed like the actual physical thing that is like such a huge part of the culture and everything that it represents. And I've seen this a lot with companies that they want to tie this, and like there is no going away from like physical or meeting people. There is something about it that can never change, right? And it's something that is mandatory, I would say, right?
I think swag has just become more and more important, and in the sense of how it builds communities and bonds between people. So it's not just about free promo items that you give away at a conference to random people that don't care about your company. Like, I've never been a big advocate for that kind of stuff. Like, I don't really want this free pen from you to like force me to take a meeting with you, but it's more so about the companies and the people that matter to them. So if you think about employees and customers, if you go back 100 years or 50 years or even 20 years, the balance of power was so much more in the company's hands. You have a few big companies that provide this service, and the people that work for those companies, it's the company that has the power to say, like, you get to work for us, or we're going to pay you what we want to pay you, or whatever it is. Or for a customer, like, there's only one IBM. You don't have 30 project management software SaaS companies like you do now. Like, today you have so many options. Like, if you're talking about, like, let's go with project management, just because there's so many SaaS tools out there. Like, if I want to work at one of those companies, I now have like 30 choices, and I can pick like, oh, I really like Asana because they have a great culture and they have a great product. And oh, I actually like Trello because it's from Atlassian, they were bootstrapped. And like, if I go to work for these companies, I have some sort of affinity for them. I have some sort of connection to them, that I'm choosing them over something else in a way that wasn't really existing in the past. So, and same thing for customers. Customers have so many choices as to like the brands they want to work with and the companies they want to buy from. So the companies they end up buying from, or the software they use, or whatever it is, they're making a choice beyond just the value of the product, that they somehow have a tie to like that company, and they care, they have this like connection with them. So swag becomes this bond between those people, between brands and their customers, brands and their employees, but then, also customer to customer and employee to employee. And it's very similar to like, getting accepted to Harvard or Stanford and going to the bookstore and getting the sweatshirt right away. It's like, you want to show that you have this affiliation. And then 100%. When you see somebody at a bar with that sweatshirt, you guys are instantly connected. And I think that's what's happened with companies and communities, is that people actually care about them now. And the swag it's almost like fashion for them. Like, they want to wear the stuff, they want to rep it proudly, and that's where we spend most of our time.
I agree, completely agree. But I think it's a lot, it amped up completely during this time and going forward. Two final questions. One is about how you see, for your 157 employees, flexibility. So a lot of what has been talked about nowadays is well-being and flexibility in, working hours, basically how you measure the output of your employees, but also the work style. Like, there's no 9 to 5, 5 days a week going to an office. So I'm wondering how you're thinking about this. What has changed, if any?
We're a little bit unique because we almost have multiple businesses within our business, because you have a physical warehouse operation, as well as like a sales, marketing, accounting, back office team, and like software engineering. So not to say that the cultures are super different, but just physically, the work in a warehouse is way different than the work of a knowledge worker, and what can be expected, or how much flexibility each group can have, is so different. For, in the warehouse, there's only so much you can do. I mean, we've set up like different shifts now that are shorter to where people can be like, I only want to work, 5 hours today or 10 hours today. Like it's a little bit more flexible in terms of the shifts. But there's only so much you can really do there. The main changes have been more on like the corporate side, corporate staff of, we've always been somewhat of a remote hybrid company. We've always had people all over the place, and we've always been this kind of, people are adults, you make the decisions about how you want to run your day. And, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it's just about getting the job done. It's not even about you getting the job done. It's just getting the job done. If you have to delegate that to people or whatever, but there's, people like, Chris on our team was at a doctor's appointment yesterday and a dentist on Friday. And Adam, who's our VP of sales, left early yesterday to go pick up his kid at school at 3:00. Those aren't even, nobody even bats an eye at those types of things. They don't really matter. If somebody wants to work at 10:00 to 1 a.m, like the world never stops, and there's no real strict time frame in which we have to get certain things done. So it's always been very flexible. And I think the main thing too is making sure that people feel that it's truly flexible and that leadership embodies that. I think one of the tricky things is, making sure people take time off, and then making sure that leadership shows that it's okay to do that. I think it's easy to get into traps of like, I've seen some of our leaders, and even me, we're technically off or on vacation or something, but we're still answering emails and still answering Slacks. And, you don't want that, because it starts to trickle down to people where they feel a sense of like, well, if I don't do what they're doing, they're going to think I don't work as hard, or I'm not as serious and committed. And you have to give people the space to, take time off and actually feel that they don't have any sort of obligation to be available and on. And that's just a matter of like setting the example at the top of like, hey, if I'm off, I'm off, and I'm telling you I'm taking a vacation and making it clear. So I think there's still a lot to be done there, but we've always, like you said, the culture's always been a high performance, high impact, you make your own decisions type culture. So it hasn't been like this big shift, like, oh, now it's remote, we have to become more flexible. But I wish, I wish we could be more flexible for the groups like in the warehouse. Like I find it hard to provide them the same level of experience as like some of the other teams, but.
I see. No, but it does make sense, right? Because the role is fundamentally different, I would say.
Yeah. One of the things I would say though is like one of our core like values is that great ideas can come from anywhere, and also that anyone can do anything at this company. So we've had people that make the progression from like a warehouse operations role into more of a knowledge worker type or corporate role or sales role. So we've had people, even 3 years ago when we were just starting, people that were driving packages to like our printing places and stuff like that and picking up boxes become salespeople. And just last month, one of our warehouse leads just became a associate product manager on the tech team. So I think that's the thing too. It's like making sure that the people that are in operations know that there's a path for them to move around and move up in the company if they show that they really care about it and they want to learn new disciplines. So I think that's really the best way that we can foster a more flexible environment and growth for them, is like helping them get to the next level in their career versus just kind of segmenting it like, hey, you're going to be over here forever and these people do this. And so we try to make it very meritocratic in terms of like anybody can do anything at the company at any moment, and also share ideas at any moment. Like we have,
that's amazing.
We started doing an AMA. Last month was the first one that we did, where everybody could submit questions and it was very open, and it's anybody from the warehouse to sales to tech or whatever. And also we have an ideas channel. An ideas email. So anybody at any moment can just send an email into ideas and SwagUp, and it goes to us as leadership. And we've already had some different pitch decks put together by people on the team, and they're talking about stuff that's totally unrelated to what they're doing on a daily basis, but they're interested and curious and they want to be heard. And we also built out something called the Council, which is a small group of like 8 people cross-functionally from different parts of the company that are very highly engaged and want to see, progress and want to collaborate. And we just talk about just ideas like, how can we make the company a better place to work? What do you want to learn from other teams? So, they become kind of these people in these different teams that go back to their teams and build out this culture that we're trying to build. And they kind of become the tentacles into the organization. And then I get the feedback from them on a monthly basis of like, what are they hearing? What do they want to improve? So then you just got to be deliberate about, kind of the actions that you're taking.
I think these are amazing tactics and things that really help to get insights, but also as an employee, you feel empowered, right? You feel that, and I think that's amazing. Honestly, that's incredible. Final question. What is your favorite swag?
Well, people make fun of me because I love to go to the warehouse and just like, I start picking out everything from the boxes, and I'm probably a nuisance because I cause chaos, but I like to like, look at the items because I don't know, I just like really like swag in general. And because it's fun, like if you're a pure software company, nothing wrong with that. And pure software companies are worth a lot more money probably, but you don't always get to see the physical element to what you're doing. What's interesting with like you guys, there is a physical element because you're helping enable people to congregate and meet and stuff like that. But some pure software companies, you never actually get to see like in a real world, example of how your product's being used. Whereas us, like we constantly are seeing it. So it's fun to have that like physical element that you can see. So anyway, I think first off, swag is about great design. Like you can have a notebook and it could look like shit or it can look amazing with it. Just a matter of the design. Like it could be the same exact item itself. So it's got to be great design. I love a good hoodie, a nice like thick material.
Everybody loves a good hoodie. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of like the zip up like Silicon Valley type hoodies, but I like just a regular kind of pullover hoodie, nice quality material. We started doing Allbirds a lot. We just did some SwagUp Allbirds that say like to the moon and stuff on them, and they have our logo. So I think that rounds out a good pack. And then the other things I would say is I write notes all the time. I'm very much a physical note taker, so I have to have a good notebook with like nice thick paper, not like some crappy thing. I don't like project like Notion and those types of things. I find them too like constrictive. I don't know what it is. Like I get claustrophobic when I'm in like project management apps. I need just whiteboards.
You need your white paper and
yeah. It's like so uncomfortable for me. I don't know if that's weird or not. And then a bottle and a backpack. So I'd say nice hoodie, Allbirds, notebook, bottle, backpack, and it has to be designed well. That'll be like my perfect swag pack, I think.
Love it. Amazing. So thank you very much for your time and the insights. I personally learned a lot. I'm at awe at what you've done in only 4 years, to be honest. It's quite amazing. And thank you very much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
No, you too. Thanks for having me. Enjoy San Francisco.
Yes. Bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.